So we'll take a look at objects and classes in Java. So before taking a look at that, we'll go to times when we didn't have an university management system. Think about managing VIT University without VTOP. So we don't have an online VIT management system or a university management system. Without that, how we are going to manage this entire university? So I was from those times wherein we didn't have a university management system. Everything was managed through some means. But even before existence of a university management system, there existed for students. We had faculty, we had courses, we had attendance, we had administrators. Administrators may be HODs, deans. We can call the lab administrators to be administrators, and examinations we had, and we had results and lot more things. We had hostels, we were managing hostels. Everything were managed without a management system. So how did they manage this data without a management system? That is the very first question. So I come from those times when we didn't have an university management system. So how they manage data? So we had something called registers. So registers, in the sense, I have created a sample register here. So for students, we'll have a register. That is, we'll enter the names of the students, address of the student, phone number, gender, date of birth, everything in a register. Even if I want to take attendance for a class, I used to bring this register wherein I'll have the date, the student names and registration numbers. I'll call you and I'll be marking the attendance. I was doing that in VIT itself, like 12 years back. So right now we don't have such things, but we were managing data using registers, plain registers. So if I want to add a student, let's say I have created the student register here. So whenever a student comes in, I want to add a student. What I should do, I should enter his data here. So maybe I have a student number 5 who is here, and then I'm entering his data here. So whenever I add a student, I have some predefined template available, right? So what all things I have to capture for a student? So I should capture serial number, his name I should write, his address I should write, phone number, gender, and then date of birth, and there can be other things in the register too. So there are certain things you have to understand here. Whenever I add a student, I capture the standard details for those students, for any student. That is one thing. And whenever I want to add a student, what is required? I require some space for that student, right? I should have space in the register to add that student. So these are the things that are required. And when you talk about a student, you can think about data members. What are data members? What I should be capturing for any student in my university. So how did I arrive at this info? While I'm creating my university management system, maybe I studied the system existing previously for that university. I went through the registers. I found that this is the data they are capturing. I understood the requirements, and then I understood whenever I want to add the student info to my system, what I should add. I should add serial number, name, address, phone number, gender, date of birth. From where I have acquired all these details? By studying the existing system in the university. So this is called requirements analysis or requirements gathering. So you have to understand the existing system so that you create a system for your clients. So these things, these attributes, I can call them data members. For any student, I'll be capturing all these attributes and its values. Next, not only that, we should also think about what actions a student can perform on this register. What actions he can perform. Maybe he can enter his details on his own. So there will be a verification check. Maybe his HOD is sitting. Come here, you are this student who got admitted. Takes his application form, verifies manually, and he asks him to enter the data. So the student is going to enter the data. What is permitted here? He can add his profile info. Later on, he changes his mobile number. Maybe he can come and modify his profile info. Anytime he wants to view what his mobile number currently is, he can view his profile info. So you can also define the actions on this register. What actions a student can perform on this register. He can do all those things only with this info. He cannot delete other students' info, right? So there are certain limitations with what a student can perform on a register. So you also capture the actions. So what are the actions? You You find that he can set his profile, maybe add his profile, view his profile anytime by opening the register and modify his profile. So for any entity, you call student to be an entity, you identify what attributes you capture and what actions that entity performs with respect to the system. So once when you are done with this, you put these things inside two parentheses. You call that to be a template or a class. That's it. That is a class. You identify what attributes pertain to that entity, what actions that entity can perform on the register or on the system. So that you have to be very clear. So let me give another example. So this is with respect to a student. What about a faculty? Can I capture the faculty's information using the student's data here, student's attributes? No. Faculty will have different set of attributes. That's why we go in for a different entity here. Faculty we say is a different entity. Why? Because the attributes will be different for a faculty. Say name and I don't know why it let me. So you capture name, faculty name, designation. Whether it's a professor, assistant professor, associate professor, cabin number will be something defined for a faculty. Address, phone number, gender, date of birth, everything also comes for a faculty. So when you take a look at the faculty, the attributes are different when compared to a student. So whenever you want to add a faculty, you identify all the attributes for adding that faculty. We didn't arrive at suddenly a faculty and a student. These entities were existing even before VTOP came into place. We studied those entities. We identified, okay, student, this is what we are capturing. Faculty, this is what we are capturing. And we also know what actions can be performed by a faculty, right? Even when I add that manual attendance register, only I'll be able to update that. You should not update my attendance registers. So I'll be able to view my profile. I'll be able to update my profile. So I'll be able to enter marks, whereas you will be able to only view marks. Even with paper-based system, these were the functionalities. We just transform these functionalities into a online system. That's it. So while we are transferring the paper-based system into an online system, we should not change the rules of an university management system, right? Just because I created an online management system, I should not allow students to change their own marks. So that's why you have to study the existing systems for an existing business to create a new system for them. So there are a lot of challenges in understanding an existing system and identifying the requirements, which you will learn in software engineering in the coming years. But you understood, for a faculty, I have to capture all these data members and what actions a faculty can perform. I've just given some samples here, say set profile, view profile, modify profile. You can also update attendance, modify attendance, update marks. So he has got its own set of actions on the system. So you put the data members plus the actions, you call that a template or a class called faculty. So we need these templates. Why we need these templates? Because whenever I want to add a new faculty, I should know what I should be allocating for that faculty. Say if a new faculty comes in, how can I add? Only when I know that this is the template, I can do that. So we need a template to allocate a new faculty. So a class is nothing but a template which defines the data members and actions. When you go for allocation, what happens? What you need when you go for allocation, you need space. On a register, you need space, and you allocate. Say I allocate this faculty number 4. I call him Venkat. He is an assistant professor, and I am allocating some cabin number 117A2. He is from say Pune, and some number. So this allocation was based on what? This template. So this allocation for Venkat, whatever data I have allocated, you can call this to be an object. So this is an object. When I talk about one specific faculty, that's an object. But how that object allocation happen? Using a template which I've already defined, and that template is called a class. So when you're allocating object, you need memory and you need a template. That's it. So this is a definition for class and an object. And then they say a class of, you can create objects which follow the class, and a class has many instances. What do you mean by many instances? You can see this is one instance, another instance, another instance, another instance, 5 instances. So you create 5 instances using a class. Object refers to a specific entity, whereas how you create this object using a template. And when you create an object, you need memory for holding the entity's data. So are you clear with what is a class? So class is a user defined, say it's a user defined blueprint from which objects are created. So when you just define, say you are defining int a, when you define int a, how many bytes getting allocated here? 4 bytes, because Java knows what is an int. But when I say student and then I put my name here, student Satish, like that, what is student? It has no idea what is student. What, how much memory should it allocate? So it will be looking for a template. What a student should perform on the system. Java doesn't have any idea about a student or a course or anything like that. So you should define this student, and that becomes the class. What is an object? Whenever I add a student, say Satish, if I add the student Satish, I should be specifying his registration number, name, address, phone number, everything. So the values pertaining to the attribute stored in a location becomes an object. That's as simple as it. So whenever you're defining a system, say university management system, I'm going to code using Java. The very first thing is I have to identify all the classes, the templates, class student. So what is this I identify? What is that I have identified here? All the data members, all the methods. Likewise, there are many classes. Class faculty, all the data members, all the actions. Likewise, I can also have a course to be a class. Why course is a class? Because course has many instances. We have Java to be a course, operating system to be a course, networking to be a course, but all the courses will have course ID, course name, course lot, course venue. So there are some parameters that is being shared by all the courses. If I want to add a new course to the system, I want a template, right? What is the template? Course ID, course name, course lot, something like that. So everything wherein you have many instances. You take a course, you have many courses. You take student, there are many students. You take a class, you take the faculty, there are many faculty members. And all these objects have a common template from which it can be created. So that's about the class concept. So when you're designing an object-oriented programming system, the very first thing is you have to identify the various classes. You have to segregate them. Okay, this is a class, that is a different class. You can't call student and faculty to be one class. So that is the first thing. That is the first thing in designing object-oriented programming systems. Identify all the classes. Next, you have the class defined in, say in Java, you have the class defined. Whenever I want to create a new student, what I will do is I will create an object of this class. What do you mean by an object? Is nothing but allocation of memory on the RAM. So some memory will be allocated on the RAM, and pertaining to this to these attributes, memory will be allocated, and then the values for that student will be put up in that place. That's it. So this is an allocation for a student named Ram. So how this allocation happened? Using this template called the class student. If you want to allocate another student, say I have another student Sam. So now the allocation again will happen. How much memory will be allocated? It depends on the data members you are defining. And then again, all these attributes will be allocated for this student called Sam. So I can maintain the data of every object in my RAM using the template. Please come in. I had a lot of confusion on objects and classes for a long time, even after graduation. Because my teachers gave me an example. Dog is a class, and maybe one of the breeds of the dog is an object. I was never able to relate how dogs came into computer science and engineering. And then when it comes to inheritance, they used to say grandfather, father, and son. I always used to think what grandfather, father, and son is doing inside computer science and engineering. But they were trying to give some examples out of engineering, which I was not able to relate to. So that is where my confusion was. And after so many years, I found out it's a template. You just create an object by allocating memory for it. So that's why I put in some time explaining you these things, because many, many of you might be a slow learner like me. So that's why. Anyway, I hope you are now clear with this. So how you declare How you declare a class in Java? Very similar like what you did in C. You give the class to be the keyword, class name. If I'm going to create a template for students, I can call students or student, whatever it is. And first you mention all the data members and then you call the member functions. What are data members? The attributes, serial number, name. Here serial number was converted to registration number. So registration number is a concept that came in because of computer science and engineering, because of your database management systems. So every student will be identified by a unique registration number. So serial number become registration number here. Again, you have name, address, phone number. So all these things come under data member. What are functions? View attendance, whatever actions the student is allowed to perform on the system. Your focus should be always on the system you're developing. So what things you can do on the system? You can message your proctor, view your attendance, view your marks. You can view your profile. So all those things are there, right? So these are the member functions. So some data members, I have given some example here. See, there is one more thing. If you have learned C++, you would have already used public, private, protected. We also have default here. These are called access specifiers. We'll come to that. Now we'll assume that everything is public, that is everything is available outside the class too. So here comes an example for declaration of a class. So you declare class students, you put all the data members. Member functions is nothing but the action. Action is nothing but the function. What is view attendance? View attendance is nothing but select star from your database where student ID is equal to this ID. So you're performing an action. So it's a function that will do something for you. Login is a function. What login does? Get input name and password. Check that with the input name and password in the database. If match, then allow the user. So it's a set of steps. So here you talk about function or member function. It's nothing but an action. They always have these standards like a class should always be a noun. It cannot be a verb. A class should not be something like view attendance should not be a class. A verb should not be a class, whereas a verb should be a function. So these are some basic standards we'll follow. So we have understood how to create a class, right? This is how you create a class. When I create a class, is memory allocated? When I create a class, will memory be allocated for a student? No. This is just a template. It's like an register with the headings on top. What is an object? Object is it will take this template and then it will allocate memory on your RAM so that it can hold the data, say what name, what registration number is for this student. So that data will be held for a specific entity. So that becomes an object. How can you create an object? Now I have created this class. How can I create an object? See, class name. This is the object name. New class name. So very simple. Say I can create a student by name Satish. Say students Satish is equal to new students. Very simple. Now what it will do? It will check for what is the definition of students. Where is the definition of students? You already defined it. If you have not defined, you will get class not found exception in Java. So you should first define the class, then create the object. Suppose you are creating the object without defining the class, you will get class not found exception kind of a things. And here it knows the definition, so it can allocate memory. How much memory it's going to allocate? It will allocate it based on the data members. Now it knows how much memory should be allocated. And then whatever data you are going to enter for Satish, say name, for this entity will be Satish, and then say address, Vellore. So for this specific entity, the memory gets allocated and then the data is held in your RAM. So that's how you declare an object. So we'll see this, how memory gets allocated for your objects. Very important. We'll just go to the next slide. We'll see this memory allocation for objects. So I have here students S1 is equal to new students. So what is the object name? S1. So S1 is actually going to refer to a memory area. It's like your string object, right? So S1 will be declared on the stack. So this is going to hold a reference. So it will be declared on the stack that's defined inside the main method. So S1 will be pointing to an allocation for your object. This is your allocation for the object on the heap, and whatever data you're going to add, say name Satish, here you have address Vellore, and say some phone number you have, say 99650, something like that. So S1 is the object, and then the data for this object is held on the heap. How will I access the name? I should say S1 dot name. Only then I'll be able to get Satish. How will I access the address? S1 dot address. So that will be Vellore. What is the phone number for this object S1? S1 dot phone number. So you have to use the dot operator to access the values pertaining to your attributes. How it happens? You use the reference, that is S1 dot name dot address dot phone number. If I have a method defined, how will I access that? S1 dot add profile info, S1 dot view profile info. Let me give another example here. Let me erase all ink on the slide. Say I'll declare something like this. Students, I'll have this student Ram is equal to new students. I perform something like this. Now what will be there? First it will check whether there is a definition for students class. Yes, I have defined students class. Next, what is that reference? Ram. And under which method it comes? Main method. So Ram will be allocated inside the main method. And Ram will be pointing to a new location. Say this is a new location. So this memory allocation happens using your data members for your class. And then when I do S1 dot add profile info, so I can add, I'm sorry, when I perform ram dot add profile info, I perform this ram dot add profile. So it will do ram dot name. It will add some ram dot name, ram dot address, ram dot phone number. So here you'll have name to be Ram, phone number to be some 111, and some address to be Chennai. I'm just giving an example. But if I want to access the data for Ram, how will I access that? Ram dot name, Ram dot phone number, Ram dot address. So you should always use your object reference to access the data for your object. If you want to access the data for S1, how will I access? X1, S1 dot S1 dot name, S1 dot date of birth, S1 dot address, S1 dot. So like that you can create any number of objects. If you want to create another object, how will I create? Students Tom is equal to new students. If you want to access the data for Tom, Tom dot name, Tom dot address, Tom dot registration number. So allocation happens in different areas on the heap. That's how we can maintain different objects inside a system. Is this clear? So our theory is done. Let us now work on some code. I'll show you some demonstrations so that you are fine for today's lab class too. So how will you create a class? Say when you are creating a class, if I just give students here, students Ram is equal to new students. Did I define the students class here first? No, I'm trying to create an object, so it gives me an error. It doesn't understand what it means by students. So it says, what is that students? What do you mean by students like that? Maybe it's scolding us. So what we'll do is, first thing is we should define a class. In Eclipse, for every class, you have to create a new file. That's how projects are maintained. But for simplicity, for understanding purposes, I'll create the class in the same file. So you give class and then students. Two parentheses you give. That defines the scope of your class. And then you define the data members. Say I define everything to be public, string, name. I'll have just two, string, city. For time constraints, let me have two data members defining my student. And then I can have some methods here too. How will I define a method? I'll say it's public, void, I'll say set profile. What do you mean by set profile? A student can set his name and city. Let's say that. Let's also have registration number because we can't skip this registration number. Public string registration number will have. Okay. So now let us talk about setting profile. Student enters his name, registration number, and profile. So we'll have a sysout statement. We'll say enter your name. So it's very registration number. We'll say we'll ask the student to enter his registration number. So whenever you're getting input from the user, what you need a scanner object. So we are declaring scanner input is equal to new scanner system.in. So you are already creating objects without understanding classes and objects. So this is an object. So where is this scanner class defined? It's an inbuilt class in Java. Already you have the template for scanner. So it's able to create an object for you. And how will you read the registration number? So registration number is defined for the class. So what I can give here is this dot registration number is equal to input dot next. Likewise, let's say sysout, enter your name. This dot name is equal to input dot next. You can also enter sysout, enter your city. This dot city is equal to input dot next. So that's how we define the method. We'll also have one more method, view profile. Public void view profile. So what we'll do here is we'll just print all the data back to the student. That is this dot registration number plus this dot name plus this dot city. So our class, our template is ready. Maybe we studied the system, we found we are storing registration number, name and city for a student. We identified only two functions for the student. He can set his profile and view his profile. Now how to create objects? That is the next question. So you can create objects now because you have defined the template. You can create it like this. Students, I'll say Satish is the student is equal to new students. Now it knows, okay, Satish is a student. So it fetches this class template, allocates memory on the heap for holding the data for Satish. So reference is Satish, the allocation will be on the heap, will be pointing to the heap. Now, how to add registration number, name and city for Satish? What you have to do is you have to use the reference Satish dot, you have to call the function that is set profile. So when I call Satish dot set profile, this method is going to execute and it will say enter your registration number. Now this dot registration number will be configured as Satish dot registration number. It will be pointing to the allocation where the memory for Satish is getting allocated. So this dot registration number is nothing but Satish dot registration number. Likewise, this dot city will be Satish dot city. This dot name will be Satish dot name. So automatically that this dot registration number, this will be pointing to the current object. How it takes the current object, that is Satish dot name, how it gets that? Because you are calling this as Satish dot set profile. So automatically whatever variables you are using inside the method will be configured as Satish dot name, Satish dot registration number, Satish dot profile. The data will be going into that. So let me create this. Let me run this, and we'll also perform Satish dot this one, Satish dot view profile. Okay. So I deleted something. So I've deleted something here. Public void view profile. Let me just complete this. This is view profile. I'm sorry, this is set profile. We can't have two methods in the same name. So obviously it gives an error. Set profile and view profile. So I'm calling set profile first. Then what I'm going to do is Satish dot view profile. Now let's run this. Let's check what's happening. So Satish dot view profile runs, and what will be executed first? Enter your registration number. So we'll see the output here. Enter your registration number. So this dot registration number will be nothing but Satish dot registration number. I give 111. Enter your name, Satish. I'll enter my name, and then city, say Vellore. So where this data is going to go? Satish dot name, Satish dot registration number, Satish dot city. So that's where it's getting stored on the heap. And when I fetch it, how I fetch it? How I fetch the data in the view profile? How I call view profile? Object reference dot view profile. So the reference will take to the memory location, and what I am fetching there, whatever I am fetching there is given here. This dot registration number will be reference dot registration number, that is Satish dot registration number, Satish dot name, Satish dot city. So what is the output you are finally getting? The data pertaining to Satish is getting returned. Can we create another object and try? How you create another object? By name Ram, students, say another student has come. Ram is equal to new students. How will I add data for Ram? I should call Ram dot set profile. How to view data for Ram? Ram dot view profile. When I do Ram dot set profile, it will be Ram dot name, Ram dot city, Ram dot registration number. View profile, you will also configure that method as Ram dot name, Ram dot city, Ram dot registration number. Because these two objects will be in two different locations in the memory. And Ram is nothing but reference to that memory location. Let's run this. Let's check. So we have now two objects. First one is for Satish. So 111. I'll enter Satish and then city Vellore. So the view profile info for Satish brings the data pertaining to object Satish. Now this is for Ram 112 Ram, and then let's say he's from Pune. So this is for Ram. Say Ram's data is in a separate location. The data for the object Satish is in a separate location. So like that you can create any number of objects. When you talk about object oriented programming, it's all objects living on the heap. And do these objects live independently? Is there any link between these objects? There's a student object, there's a faculty object, there's a course object, there's a venue object, there's an HOD object, there's an admin object. So these are all objects, but somehow these objects are related to each other. Satish as an object teaches 60 different objects in the student class. So these objects communicate with each other. All the 60 different objects of the student of this class is linked with the object by name Java course. So when you take a look at object oriented programming, it's nothing but all the objects communicating with each other. That makes an object oriented system. So we have attained our first step, creating objects, understanding objects, creating classes. Are you all clear with this? You should not have any confusion on identifying classes and objects for a system. Okay, can you take up an exercise? Can you create a course class? Create two different course objects, set the course data and display the course data. Can you take up this exercise now?